Hello, I'm back again. Peter, as you know me now, or rather as Jesus called me. Yes, yeah. I think I've got to where I was telling you about how we got out of the boat and followed Jesus. That was quite amazing. I don't quite understand why I did that, but I did. Myself, Andrew, James, and John followed Jesus very closely, and the rest of the crowd followed behind us. There was quite a crowd. We got to the village, Bethsaida, where we come from, and there, sitting outside his house, was Philip. Now, Philip and Andrew, they'd almost grown up together. They knew each other really well. They were good mates. And Philip looked at Andrew, following Jesus, and said, "What's going on?" "You're not going to believe it," said Andrew. "You're not going to believe it. This is Jesus. He's the Messiah." Philip looked at him. Philip knew all about Andrew and how he'd followed John. He knew the whole thing because Andrew had told him. And Philip said, "This is the one, is it? The one you told me about?" "Yes," said Andrew, and proceeded to tell him exactly what had happened out on the lake. Philip came up to Andrew, closer. "Do you think?" he said, but before he could say anything else, Jesus turned round. He looked at Philip. "Come and follow me," he said. "It's Philip, isn't it?" Philip looked quite amazed. He looked at Andrew, and then he looked at me. "Simon," he said, you're following Jesus too?" "Well, yes," I said. "Don't ask me why. It's just something about him. I just want to hear more what he says." Philip looked back at Jesus. "I'm coming," he said. And so we walked on into Bethsaida. We had a couple of days, Jesus talking to huge crowds, but he kept the five of us very close to him, as if, although he was talking to the crowds, he was actually talking to us and trying to teach us something. And I suddenly thought, we're his disciples, aren't we? We're actually following him, but normally a disciple chooses a master, the teacher that he wants to follow. The disciple chooses a rabbi, but this time, Jesus has chosen us. I had a strange feeling about that because it was totally opposite to what was expected. Philip, he listened and listened and listened. He hadn't been down by the lake, so he was only getting the story about the catch of fish second hand. Now, about that catch of fish, I just wasn't too sure. Some people will already call it a miracle, but Andrew and I were rowing the boat out and Jesus was sitting in the stern. Now, my feeling is that Jesus probably saw the birds coming down low over the water looking for the fish which were near the surface and told us exactly when to stop and exactly which side of the boat to put the net out. Now, I sort of said as much to Andrew and he looked at me absolutely gone out and said, "Oh, no, 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 no." But I thought, yeah, yes. Either luck or he wasn't so much of a landlubber as I thought he'd been. Any rate, it was a couple of days later and Philip said, I've got to go and tell my mate." "Who?" I said to him. "Nathaniel. I've got to go and tell him. I've got to go and tell him about Jesus." And with that he went off. I looked at Andrew. "Do you know this Nathaniel?" "Oh, yeah," said Andrew. "Yeah, Ptolemy's son. Yeah, it's sort of a nickname, really. I mean, it's Bartalmai, but I mean, let's face it, it's a Greek name." "Well," I said to him, "Philip's a Greek name, isn't it?" "Well, do you know," said Andrew, "I never thought of that. I mean, we're all sort of in it together here, aren't we? You don't sort of realise that we're not all what I said. We're all Galileans, I said. And we're a right mixture, aren't we?" "Yeah," said Andrew. "Yeah." And we began to think of other people we knew from various different parts of the world. Well, our world. Those of us who lived up by the lake, those of us of Jewish stock, and some of us a long way away, some from the coast, some Greeks, from all over, really. But it was good as Galilee. He was home. At any rate, a while later, Philip came back. Jesus went out to meet them. "Ah," said Jesus, when he saw them coming up. "Here comes a real Jew, somebody who knows what's what, and somebody knows what he wants, why he wants it, and is pretty well versed in the scriptures." Now, actually, that was true, according to Andrew. Yes, Nathaniel, or as we know now as Bartholomew, Ptolemy's son, he was a good man. He was very strong in the faith, and Jesus had recognized this. When he got up to Jesus, Jesus said to him, "I know who this is, Philip." "How do you know?" said Nathanael. "I know who you are, Ptolemy's son. I know who you are, Bartholomew. I saw you sitting under the tree before Philip met you." Bartholomew's face, well, it was a picture. His eyes went wide. You must be the Messiah." Jesus laughed. "Well, if you think that I'm the Messiah just because what I've just told you, oh, you wait to see what you've got coming." And with that, he gathered us together. "Come on," he said. "The crowds are here. I'm going to speak to them, but listen to what I say." We had about 3 or 4 days of that. During that time, we'd gone home, and my mother-in-law had been ill, and Jesus had gone in, and everybody said he'd healed her, but I think she was just being lazy and lying in bed, trying to pull a fast one. At any rate, after a few days of listening to Jesus, he called the 5 of us together. Oh, sorry, now I should say 6, shouldn't I? Because Bartholomew was following too. "I've been invited to a wedding," he said. "Well, my mother's going, and she's invited us. It's a local wedding. You probably know most of the people there, but I thought it'd be good for us, just us few, just to go there, just to get maybe relaxed, get to know each other a bit more, have a bit of fun." Now, that was interesting. Have a bit of fun. Because the one thing I found out about Jesus in all the time I was with him, he loved a party. He loved a meal. He loved the banter that was going on. Well, we went to the wedding. It was quite a big affair, in fact, quite posh. And Jesus led us in all together, and there's a woman standing over with a couple of other women and a young man or two, and she suddenly waved to Jesus. "That's my mother," he said. "Mary. I'll go over and see her." So we went over, had a chat with his mother, and actually it was rather good. He waved us in and introduced us. She looked at us rather suspiciously, as if, "Why are you so close to my son? What are you after?" But Jesus saw this and said something to her, and she smiled and nodded her head. Well, the wedding party was fantastic, absolutely wonderful. The food was marvellous, the wine flowed, the chatter went on. We got quite relaxed. We saw a different side to Jesus. Yeah, a very different side to Jesus. He was enjoying himself. He was enjoying being with people. Now, that again was strange. He'd chosen us as disciples rather than the other way around. And rabbis usually kept themselves to themselves in a crowd and sort of austere. But oh, not Jesus. Oh no, he was going around chatting here, chatting there. Some people he knew, some people he didn't know, but he seemed interested in their stories. He was listening. Meanwhile, the wine was flowing, the food was wonderful, the music was great, and then I noticed the steward, or at least somebody who was working for the steward, looked a bit worried. There was obviously a conversation going on, and Jesus' mother, this Mary, realised it too. She walked over to them. They were telling her something, and their hands were going, and they were pointing, and the look on their faces, what can we do about this? It's awful, it's terrible. She turned round and she walked across to where we were standing. "Have you seen Jesus? Have you seen my son?" she said. "Oh, he's over there," said Andrew. She went across to him. Well, we were nosy. We thought, what's going on here? So we followed her. "Listen," she said to Jesus. "Listen, the party's in full swing, but there's only one problem." "What?" said Jesus, as if he was distracted. What's wrong, Mum? I'm busy. They're running out of wine. In fact, they've almost run completely out of wine. We were horrified. Well, a wedding running out of wine, that was bad planning. Very, very bad planning. And it was sort of bad luck in our local tradition to the poor couple who had got married if the party didn't go as was expected. Running out of food or wine was an absolute disaster. In fact, it was just so wrong. "What do you want me to do about it?" said Jesus. "Well, you can sort it out," says Mary. "Look," said Jesus, "go away. It's not my time yet. Just go away." Now that interested me. It's not my time yet. What on earth was all that about? I noticed that Andrew had listened to that and probably had twigged on as well. "What does he mean?" said Andrew. "Not my time yet." Mary walked across to the steward and his helpers and said something to one of the helpers. He came across to Jesus. Jesus looked resigned. It's almost an expression said, "Oh, Mom, what have I said? Please." But the steward's helper told Jesus exactly what had happened. Jesus looked at us. "Oh," he said, and under his breath, I thought I heard him say, "So it is my time." But Andrew and the others didn't hear it, so maybe I was imagining it. At any rate, he said to the helper, "Go over there, where those 6 large vats of water are. You know, the ones that we washed our hands with for purification before we started the feast and everything. The one we're going to wash with before we go out." The man looked at him. "Those," he said. "What's that got to do with running out of wine?" "Just go across," said Jesus. "But before you go across, go and tell the steward to go and have a look in there. He might find out something to his advantage." And he gave the man quite a funny look. I didn't know whether he was joking or whether he was being serious. It was a sort of a half joke, half resigned and half... Well, it was almost like I felt in a storm, and I know I've seen Andrew's face, the sort of, "Oh, here we go then" face. The man went across to the steward and tapped him on the shoulder. The steward turned round, obviously listening to him, looked at him, looked across at us, looked across at Jesus, and you could see him say, What? Them?" At any rate, they went across. The steward took one of the big ladles, dipped into the water. Well, I could see it dripping off the ladle from here, from where I was standing. That was not water, that was wine. The look on the steward's face and his helper's face was an absolute picture. And I think mine was too. Jesus wasn't even looking. He was talking to somebody else. The steward put the ladle to his mouth and sipped. You could see his face. Whoa. One by one, the steward's helpers went round, passing out the wine. I had a cup. I tasted it. It was the best wine I have ever tasted in my life. It was beautiful. And I heard several people saying, "Oi, this is unusual." Usually by this time in the party you get this sort of, well, let's face it, cheap stuff. But this is wonderful. What a fantastic party. What a brilliant couple. What a fantastic steward to have done this. I saw Mary looking at Jesus. I saw Jesus looking at Mary with a look that says, well, like I said earlier, here we go then. Everybody said, when they found out what had happened, those of us in the know, of course, that it was an absolute miracle. Now, it made me see Jesus in a totally different light. I could probably, as I've done to you already, explain the big catch of fish. That was, well, I've already said, that was explainable, but this, oh no. No, not 6 vats of water. I'd already washed my hands out of that. I knew that was water. But it was wine. I looked at Andrew and the others. Philip had got a sort of a almost glazed look on his face. He's shaking his head. That was water, wasn't it, Simon? He said. Yeah, it was, I said. That was where we washed our hands when we came in, wasn't it? He said. Yes, it was, I said. But, yeah, I said, the best wine I've ever tasted as well. We looked at Jesus. Andrew said, he is the Messiah, you know. And you know, for the first time, I actually believed that.